Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 or unit 2. I am going to do something a little bit different this week in providing a screencast lecture for the week. I think this is going to be a little bit better because it gives me the opportunity to provide you with some good examples for what we're talking about. And I think especially when we get into the business of ethics, which we are starting this week, it helps to have those examples to help have things make a little more sense. Now, this is going to be like a regular lecture. I'm not going to do a do-over. If I were lecturing in the classroom, you guys would just have to put up with whatever came out of my mouth. So I'm just going to kind of take this the same way. So bear with me. I am going to start with our ethics theories. Um, since this is an ethics designated course, we have to cover 5 different ethic theories. First one is utilitarianism. Then we have egoism, Kantian theory, divine command, and virtue. There are about a gazillion different theories out there. What we want to do is just focus on these particular 5, and you'll find that while some of these may apply to you, some of them may not. More than one will certainly apply to you, and you'll find that in certain situations you may have a bit of a conflict within yourself. That is completely normal. I don't know of anyone that subscribes to just one theory. I think everything with ethics really depends on the situation and circumstance. So, starting with utilitarianism, this is really the most common one that you will come across in any walk of life. It's really just promoting the greatest good for the greatest number with the least amount of harm. So, the perfect example that comes to my mind is if you are, unfortunately, we've got this big story in the news with the shooting in Orlando. So, a great example of utilitarianism would be if we were to kill the shooter in the interest of saving other lives. So we're sacrificing one life to save the lives of many. I won't say in this case that he's innocent. That remains to be seen. But anyway, this particular theory was founded primarily by Jeremy Bentham and then further developed by John Stuart Mill. Those of you that have taken philosophy classes, this is going to be a lot of review for you. So you may have more to add. I'm really just going to give you a brief overview of it, and then we're going to dive more into it. This is going to be an overreaching theme through the rest of our semester. The next one is egoism. I think everyone can own up to the fact that we use this particular theory to some degree, whether it's business, in our personal lives, in our careers, in our education. Really, it simply put, we are morally required only to make ourselves happy. We don't have any moral obligation to others. Hence the term egoism. It's really using our own ego. It is somewhat contradictory because it does allow the same choice to be both right and wrong. I'll talk more about that as we get to some global issues this week. It's a really simple one to understand. Just think of how your ego plays into how you form ethical opinions and decisions. The third one is one that I am not terribly familiar with. It's Kantianism. I just call it the Kantian theory. Rightness or wrongness of actions does not depend on their consequences, but whether or not they actually fulfill what we're supposed to do. I don't see this one as often in global issues, or really, I have not come across it too much in health overall. It's one that I'd like to include because I think when we start talking about our global issues, we may be able to tie this to at least some small aspect of some of these global health issues that we talk about. Virtue ethics, just like it sounds, we're applying the moral character as a base for one's choices and actions. This was a prominent theme for Aristotle. I don't know that he actually developed it, but he really placed a huge importance on virtues within his moral theory. So a lot of you we can call ethics and virtue the same thing. They aren't necessarily the same thing, but some of you may include virtue as one of your ethics. That is quite normal, and keep in mind that our ethical compass is really developed as part of our upbringing, part of our environment, part of our culture. There's so many aspects. And then as we become adults and form our own opinions, it may be other experiences that contribute to that ethical compass as well. Finally, divine command, it is just like it sounds. So really, your actions are either right or wrong, depending on whether they agree with what God or whoever your higher power or being has said. My favorite example on this one would be the Bible's 10 Commandments. So, thou shalt not kill. So I'm not going to kill someone using the divine command theory because it disagrees with what my higher power says I should not do. So now bear with me because I'm going to have to navigate to a different screen. So we're going to try this. And we're going to go into our PowerPoint for chapter 3. I thought it was going to be easier to do it this way than trying to do 3 different screen casts on this. Chapter 3 is really about research in global health, and I have the sorry, I've got people popping up on Facebook. I should turn those notifications off. Anyway, I have been able to work in clinical research. I did it in the past. Quite honestly, I have an ethical issue with it, which is why I don't work in clinical research right now. Not saying that that's right or wrong. That's my own personal decision. But let's dive into it a little bit. Sorry, got a little crazy there. So some terminology that you will hear, and some of these we actually saw in our chapters last week. So epidemiology studies the distribution and determinants of morbidity, mortality, and disability in populations. So there are actually people that are epidemiologists. At Boise State and across the Treasure Valley, most of our epidemiologists are veterinarians. Strangely enough, but you'd be surprised, diseases like E. coli, salmonella, listeria. Epidemiologists are the ones that isolate this and make the determination what is safe and unsafe. Statistics. You'll hear me preach about statistics until your ears bleed. I love statistics. I hated the class. I will be the first to admit that I swore I would never ever use statistics once I was done with the class. However, I hate to say it now, but we use it every single day. It's the collection, analysis, interpretation, presentation, and organization of data. The biggest thing, if you take nothing else from this class, please know that statistics can be skewed to show whatever that researcher wants it to show. It's all based upon interpretation. You've all seen the television commercials, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Colgate. Well, when you see something like that, once you've taken statistics and kind of know that they have the possibility of being skewed, you start questioning, well, where did they get these 5 dentists from? What population did they pull them from? Were they employees of Colgate? Had they never used another toothpaste? You start asking yourself a lot of questions. Statistics can be used for good and for evil, I think, is the best way to put it. Just really when you hear someone cite a statistical source or research shows or studies have shown, question that, dive into it. Don't take it at face value. I will tell you this will be a question on our final exam. I will ask you about statistics and whether or not they should be taken at face value. That's almost word for word what the question is on the exam. Okay, so we have different levels of studies to gather information. We have a primary study. So this is collecting new data that has not been collected before. These are usually observational. These are the people in the shopping mall that are asking you to fill out a questionnaire. These are the people that are calling you on the telephone, asking you to do a short survey. Secondary studies are analyzing and reporting on that data that has then been collected from the primary study. And then a tertiary study is the collection of research from the primary and secondary studies, and then a summarization. So that's usually like a peer review article or a publication of some sort. Observational studies, just like it sounds, it's hands off. There's no intervention. It's less invasive. Again, surveys and questionnaires, really observing what people are doing or what they've done in the past. One of the types of studies that you should know falls under observational are the cohort studies. What a cohort is it's a similar group of people. Usually in a study type situation, they're followed from point A to point B. So they may be studying the effects of fluoride in the water or the toothpaste. So they start with kindergartners and follow this cohort up to age 20 and then report on the findings. So you'll see cohort studies done quite a bit. Experimental studies. Now these are known as intervention studies. So there's actually some type of intervention being done. Researchers, this is where you will find clinical research. So the researchers are assigning subjects to either receive or not receive a particular exposure. So the best example on this is the clinical trials for new medications. The FDA goes through this huge process of approving a new medication. And part of it is doing a clinical trial. So you have a randomized trial, so people are assigned by chance. Everyone has an equal opportunity to be a part of the study. Some may receive the active intervention, and then the comparison group will not receive the intervention, but they're both randomly assigned. Then a double-blind study. This is where no one knows who's getting the intervention and who's not the researchers nor the participants. So you've heard the term placebo effect. This is a good way of not necessarily in a double-blind, but in a randomized control trial, you may see a lot of the placebo effect take place, where you have participants who think they are receiving the intervention actually start reporting benefits or detriments, and in actuality they're receiving a placebo. So obviously there's a huge ethical concern within research. They have a governing board, institutional review board, that ensures that the risk of any study is minimal. So it's really checking to make sure that participants know that their participation is voluntary and that they can drop at any time. It also makes sure that all participants are aware of any and all risks and assurance of personal information and confidentiality. It really is quite difficult to get a study through the institutional review board. There's a lot of process involved, a lot of paperwork involved. I think IRBs are there for a great reason. And if you ever do choose to participate in a research study, make sure that you read your informed consent very closely. That's where you're going to find out about any and all risks and letting you know that you can drop out of the study at any time. That's something that the IRB puts in place, that any research study has to have within it in order to be approved. So, as I said, we're going into ethics full steam ahead starting this week, and it will be an ongoing theme. So when you think about research, a lot of ethics come up. So testing on animals, you can have a personal opinion on that. That's a tough one for me. I don't believe in it. I go out of my way to look for products that are not tested on animals. Testing on humans, I have an issue with that too. That's part of why I am out of clinical research, because I don't like the ethical aspect. It goes against my ethical compass. Then the placebo versus the treatment. There's a lot of people that get their hopes up, and it may be a last-ditch effort. Think about the cancer patients that they think they're getting a good treatment that may put their cancer in remission, or at least reduce the side effects of the chemotherapy